Ever get that feeling like you want to be ahead of the curve, to know what's coming next in gaming?
Yeah, like getting the inside track on the really exciting stuff.
Exactly. Well, consider this your personal briefing. Today we're doing a deep dive into 10 upcoming sci-fi games that honestly look fantastic.
And what's really caught our eye is the mix. We're seeing a lot of roguelite elements, survival horror vibes, or sometimes, both mashed together.
Right. These are all slated for 2025 and beyond, so it's a good look ahead.
Mm-hmm. And we've basically been digging through the initial descriptions, the announcements. What we want to do is give you the highlights.
Kind of cut through the noise, yeah. Focus on what makes each one potentially special so you get the picture without drowning in news feeds.
That's the mission. Zero in on the really compelling bits.
Okay, so first one on the list, Moros Protocol. This is hitting PC in 2025.
And the label is Sci-Fi Roguelite First-Person Shooter.
Which immediately tells you, okay, it's going to be up close, personal, and probably pretty intense. Plus that roguelite angle.
Totally. And the survival horror stuff, it really jumps out when you look closer. You're stranded, decaying warship, you know the drill.
Classic setup for unease.
Right. Dark world, monsters lurking. We're talking about desperate fights. Sounds like it'll keep you on edge.
You know what grabbed me, though? The look of it. They're using a custom renderer.
Yeah. Building their own engine.
Which lets them blend retro and modern aesthetics. They're calling it a decayed science fiction atmosphere. I'm picturing that being really effective.
It could be. That mix. It can make things feel old and broken, but also disturbingly new. Especially with, dynamic lighting and good sound design playing tricks on you.
Yeah, imagine creepy sounds echoing, shadows moving, and then there's the roguelite structure itself.
Where dying isn't the end, it's part of the loop.
You learn, you upgrade, and the levels change every time. Procedurally generated layouts.
So huge replayability. Even if you keep dying, you're making progress, kinda, and you never know what's next.
That's the hook, isn't it? And the pixel art style, it might look retro.
But it can still have a lot of detail. It could definitely pull in fans of older sci-fi horror. Nostalgia, but with modern depth.
Plus, fast-paced shooting inspired by classics. So you can fight back, adapt your strategy each run. Sounds promising.
Definitely one to watch.
Okay, next. Directive 8020. This one's got a date, October 2nd, 2025, and it's multi-platform, PC, PS5, Xbox Series XS.
Right, and this is the start of the Dark Pictures Anthology's second season. So we kind of know what to expect format-wise.
Yeah, choice-based narrative, high stakes, that's their whole thing.
For sure. And the setup here, super unsettling. Colony ship crashes 12 light years from home. Planet's house at EF.
Bad enough, but then...
There's a mimicking alien organism stalking the crew. Instant paranoia fuel, right? Who can you trust?
Exactly. It's not officially a roguelite, but you can see how those high stakes create replayability.
Oh yeah. Permadeath for characters based on your choices. That means every playthrough could diverge massively.
Plus, this constant threat you have to evade, it feels almost roguelike in its pressure.
And they're talking stealth sections, using a scanner to try and figure out who's who or what is what.
Totally reminds you of those classic films they mentioned, like The Thing, Alien, Event Horizon even.
That claustrophobia, the isolation, not knowing who's infected or replaced. Classic sci-fi horror.
And then they say player choices are more important than ever. That screams branching storylines.
Yeah, you're really shaping the outcome. Who survives, who doesn't. It has that kind of replayability, even without the procedural stuff.
Makes sense. Okay, moving on. Killing Floor 3, the sequel people have been waiting for, also aiming for 2025.
Right, PC, PS5, Xbox Series XS, set way later in 2091, so 70 years after the last one.
The world's basically wrecked by Horsene's Zeds, those bioengineered monsters, and you're part of a rebel group, Nightfall.
Now, Killing Floor is primarily action horror FPS, heavy on the co-op.
But where do the roguelite elements maybe creep in?
Well, you could argue the wave-based survival has that feel. You fight waves, earn dosh, buy upgrades, unlock skills, get better gear between rounds.
Ah, okay. That loop. Face random challenges, get incrementally stronger within a match.
Exactly. It has echoes of that roguelite progression cycle. And you can do it solo or with up to 6 players, cross-platform too.
They're apparently aiming for a bit more grounded feel this time, despite the sci-fi setting. Darker tone, less outlandish stuff.
Yeah, which might appeal to fans. They've also redone movement climbing, dodging, sliding. Should make combat feel more dynamic.
And 6 specialists, each with unique gear and abilities. Lots of team strategy potential there.
Definitely. And it's interesting, they delayed it from March Exists they're taking beta feedback seriously, maybe refining that progression loop.
Could be good news for players who like that deeper customization.
Right.
All right, let's switch to something explicitly roguelike. Neon Abyss 2. This hits PC early access on Steam pretty soon, July 17th, 2025.
Yes, diving back into the cybermeth. The first one was popular, that frantic run-and-gun roguelike action.
And the sequel keeps that core, but adds, notably, up to 4-player online co-op.
Which should be chaotic fun. Now, it's not really survival horror.
No, but you're surviving against hordes in this dangerous, shifting abyss. There's definitely that element of constant pressure within the sci-fi rogue-like framework.
And that early access period stretching into 2026 means they're likely planning a lot of content, listening to players.
A big draw of the original was the unlimited item synergies, right? Combining items for crazy effects.
Oh yeah, they're bringing that back. That's huge for roguelite appeal. Every run feels unpredictable because of those potential combos.
They're also promising more combat styles, more enemy types, so expect even wilder action.
And there's this new faith system. Sounds like another layer of choice during runs, unlocking special rooms or powers.
Plus more weapons, swords, and magic alongside guns. That really opens things up.
Absolutely. More build variety. And you can't forget the whole cyberpunk look and the often absurd items. It's got a very distinct personality.
Definitely. Okay, shifting again. Hypo Lightbreaker. This actually hit PC early access back in January 2025.
Right, and this is a big step for that universe. From the 2D drifter to a full 3D open-world roguelite.
You play as a breaker, exploring the overgrowth, fighting enemies and big bosses called crowns, third-person combat.
And while it's not straight survival horror, there's meant to be a feeling of, struggle, vulnerability, the world's in ruins.
Death and Trying Again is central. They call it an extraction roguelike.
Which is interesting. It's not just about killing stuff, it's about getting out with your loot.
Go in, scavenge, beat a boss maybe, then survive the trip back to base. Adds a different kind of tension, losing potential progress.
And the open world itself is procedurally generated. That's ambitious. Unique layouts, enemies, loot every time.
On a big scale. Plus cool movement, wall dashing, hoverboard, gliding.
Yeah.
Sounds fun to just get around.
Yeah, traversal looks key.
Yeah.
And there's a hub, the Cursed Outpost, that you help rebuild between runs using the resources you extract.
Ah, nice. Persistent progress tying the runs together.
Exactly. And tons of weapons, items, upgrades. Build crafting potential is pretty vast.
Okay, next one sounds intense. Void Murders. This is indie from Mac and Cheese Games for PC. Grimdark survival horror roguelite.
Yeah, that description alone. And the premise is wild. You're a nun in a spacesuit fighting a biomechanical plague.
Just certainly unique, really stands out. Exploring abandoned ships, space cathedrals, sounds incredibly atmospheric.
Very grim, very challenging, they say. And it is a roguelite procedural levels, meta progression. So that core loop is there.
But the survival horror mechanics sound nuts. Managing sanctity, affected by choices, unlocks holy or cursed items.
And enduring stigmata to fight the plague monster. Sounds like it's leaning hard into the body horror and psychological aspect.
Plus a handcrafted art style aiming for dread and isolation.
Yeah. They mentioned a demo is coming soon, so that'll be the first real taste. Definitely one for the curious.
Am I kidding? Okay, on to a big one. Saros, PS5 exclusive, 2026 release from Housemarque.
The Returnal, folks. Yeah, big expectations here. Revealed at the State of Play, they're calling it a spiritual successor.
Builds on Returnal's third-person action, sci-fi action roguelike, or roguelite, set on the planet Carcosa under an eclipse.
Ominous. You play as Arjun Devraj, a Soltari enforcer looking for answers.
But here's the key difference from Returnal, and I think it's a big one.
Permanent progression.
Yes, permanent resources and upgrades. So when you die, you don't lose everything. You can build up your loadout over time.
That's going to be a welcome change for a lot of players, I bet. Still challenging, but less punishing, maybe.
Should take some of the sting out of dying repeatedly. They're also talking up a haunting story about a lost colony, maybe more narrative focused.
Could be. And that tagline, every time the sun dies, madness reigns. Then everything begins again. Cosmic horror, cyclical gameplay.
Yeah.
It definitely still sounds intense, with survival horror undertones.
For sure. Okay, let's step away from roguelites for a second. Dark Mass, Fall 2026, PC, PS5, Xbox Series XS.
This one's first-person psychological horror. Deep ocean setting.
Thalassophobia Central. You're Alice, a deep-sea explorer, find a shipwreck leading to a sunken manor.
And naturally, something horrible is lurking down there. A presence bound by a dark curse.
Just the idea of being trapped underwater like that, the pressure, the darkness. Unreal Engine 5 should make it look terrifyingly real.
Yeah, that oppressive atmosphere. And you communicate with your brother via walkie-talkie, which could add an emotional anchor.
While solving puzzles based on, get this, real historical torture rituals? Yikes.
Seriously unsettling. Plus, moral choices affecting your fate. Sounds like it's aiming for deep psychological dread.
But yeah, no mention of roguelite stuff here. Seems like a focused narrative horror experience.
Makes sense.
Okay, next, Ghost Sector, PC exclusive 2026. This one's leaning hard into retro vibes.
From Polygon Crypt and Gigatank 3000, sci-fi horror survival. Your MO7, a prototype android trapped in a lockdown facility.
Gotta escape, figure out your origins, solve puzzles. Classic setup.
But the big hook is the style. They're explicitly going for PS1 survival horror. Fixed cameras, tank controls.
Wow, okay, that's a choice. It could be amazing for atmosphere, that deliberate clunkiness, limited view.
Definitely builds tension differently. A blend of futuristic decay and that specific retro horror feel. Think Galarians, maybe some alien vibes in the aesthetic.
It's bold, limited power sources, upgrades with downsides. Sounds like resource management will be key too.
Adds to the stress. The story involves shady android research in an old prison. MO7, waking up after it all goes wrong.
That's cool, very specific appeal, but again, purely survival horror, no roguelite elements mentioned.
Right. Focus on that retro feel.
And finally, number 10, Animal Use Protocol. This one's listed for Q3, Q4 2026 on PC.
That's about all we know right now. It's a bit of a mystery box.
Just the title and the survival horror tag.
Yeah. The name suggests maybe bio-horror, unsettling experiments, could easily fit sci-fi.
But purely speculation at this point. We have no idea if there are any roguelite mechanics involved. Just one to keep on the radar for more info.
Exactly. Wait and see on that one.
So wow, that's quite a list. 10 glimpses into what's coming in sci-fi, mixing things up in really interesting ways.
It really is a diverse lineup, isn't it? From frantic roguelite shooters like Moros Protocol or Neon Abyss 2,
to deep psychological stuff like Dark Mass, or that retro throwback Ghost Sector, or the unique premise of Void Martyrs.
and big hitters like Saros building on Returnal or Directive 8020 continuing that narrative horror tradition. It shows how developers are playing with these genres.
Absolutely. Blending sci-fi with roguelite loops and survival horror tension seems to be a really fertile ground right now.
These sneak peeks definitely give a taste of some potentially fantastic and maybe pretty stressful experiences ahead.
Which kind of leads to the final thought we wanted to leave you with. Looking at all these, which concepts really grabbed you?
Yeah, what combination of mechanics, setting, horror, replayability? What sounds most compelling for the kind of games you love?
It's definitely worth digging deeper into any that sparked your curiosity. The future of sci-fi gaming looks intriguingly unpredictable and maybe a little terrifying.